Hey everybody, it's Bob Crossan, Senior Managing Editor for Water and Waste Digest, and as we are doing all month long for July, we are featuring our 2020 Young Pros. And today I have with me Shelly Porter. She is Engineering Manager for West Virginia American Water. So Shelly, thank you so much for being on the call. We really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks, Bob, for having me.
Yeah, congratulations also. I wanted to start kind of first with your path in the water industry. You mentioned a lot of research opportunities as helping you discover your passion. Could you describe a little bit about how that has led you into the industry and then up to your current position with West Virginia American Water?
Yeah, I had a great opportunity while I was in college studying as a civil engineer to take part in some research, and it was centered around water, E85 fuels and viscosity measurements, and it had to do with freight transport and then also heavy metals removal. And as a part of that, I had the opportunity to do presentations at American Society of Engineering Educators Conference and also at our state legislature's Research Day at the Capitol. And that gave me the opportunity to learn more about the water industry. And through that, I also applied to an AWWA scholarship and I received that and got to go to our state's conference. And the company that took care of me while I was at the conference, they were a state consulting firm. And it was a really, we just hit it off. And after I finished school, they ended up hiring me. And it was a really good fit. The gentleman that founded that company, he had a military background and it was very structured, and he had since passed, but his wife ran that business, and she was really thought it was really important to grow young professionals and their skill set. So it really was a good fit. And the other engineers there, where I was the youngest one, I got really good at doing things that they didn't like to do. So the planning reports, things with CSO long-term control plans and MS4s, that was that phase 2, it was coming about. And I had the opportunity to do a lot of work with setting budgets and ordinances for those communities and planning and a lot of the utility side of the business. So I got really good at that. And when there was an opportunity with American Water that was posted. I applied, interviewed, and got the job there. And I've been able to grow my career at that utility as well. And they've been very good also to support growth among young professionals. And I was able to go from a project manager to then supervising the GIS department to an engineering manager where I am now. So it was a nice flow through the water industry.
Yeah, it sounds like you staged like really nicely. You were able to follow like a really consistent, smooth path, and you like constantly challenging, but never overwhelming.
Yeah, it was, and grow my network. You know, I knew I didn't want to do design, but I had skill sets that fit my interests better and worked well in the utility industry. So it was just a good fit, and everything came at the right times. And I still work with engineers from my previous company. They're in other companies now as well. And so it's a small industry. So you just keep on growing your network and finding where you can contribute within the industry. And I really enjoy it.
Yeah. So one of the things too, so in your questionnaire, you mentioned that you kind of had to find the right balance between activities, socializing, academics, all that kind of stuff in college. Could you talk about how you navigated that and how that's helped you for your career? I imagine there's some overlap in the skill set there.
Yeah, and I still struggle with that today as well.
I think everyone does.
Yeah, definitely when you have that personality type that really likes to get involved in things and network and socialize. But it did help me learn to prioritize and also just kind of understand, you know, when it's time to step out of something or when it's time to really put in extra, you know, time as well. So I still do overextend myself, but again, I've created a network. I've learned how to delegate and also get other new professionals involved so they can see the opportunity, definitely with a lot of professional societies. I really think that's important. Outreach and getting involved with AWWA or ASCE or WEF, any of them, they all you can grow from it. So if I know I've had the opportunity to be involved with technical committees through AWWA or leadership opportunities with chairing one of the state's organizations, also with the Water Utility Council and legislative issues. So those are really valuable opportunities that maybe at certain times I'm overextending myself, but I really do grow from it. And then you just have to learn again when to step away or try something new as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Or reprioritize, just shuffle the deck.
Yeah, yeah. And going back to the networking part of it, that's invaluable for your job because I know myself, I can't know everything that has to do with the water industry. And also, people move in their job roles. I have former coworkers that work at the Corps, and maybe I'm running into a permitting issue. So that part of it's really important. I'm a part of the Water Leadership Institute for 2020, and when we did a networking session, our first networking session, a gentleman's face, popped up on the screen, and it was a gentleman named Jesse Birch from Arkansas. And I thought, oh, I met him about 5 years ago at a YP summit for AWWA and WEF. And that was just a great opportunity. We've been able to talk about some utility aspects, and we've also been working on a project as part of that group, and we've learned about our strengths, our leadership strengths, and how to use those to move forward through the project. So it is difficult. I'm still learning with that, and it is reprioritizing, like you said. And
Yeah, I think that's just part of continuous improvement. It's always
yeah,
it's for people who like to do everything at once. I'm one of those kinds of people too. You just have to constantly be checking yourself.
yep, yep. But it's
Yeah.
all good. It's all good
Yeah.
things.
So also your most memorable project on that questionnaire, it sounded like it made a really impactful it was really impactful for you, and a staff really gave you an idea of kind of like what the purpose you have in the industry can be and how like at a ground level meaningful it can be. Could you talk a little bit about that project? I believe it was the Queen Shoals PSD project that you had mentioned for that.
Yeah, there was an event here in West Virginia. It was caused some very devastating flooding to the area, and resources across the state with the National Guard, with all the utilities. We were stretched very thin. There was a warrant. It's our warrant network for assistance, and a request came in from Queen Shoals PSD for assistance from our utility, West Virginia American Water, and our operations. They were trying to get our system back in place as well. So it came to our engineering group, and myself and the construction manager, along with a couple other people and a contractor, were tasked with getting Queen Shoals PSD back in water. They'd already been without water for a number of days, and we had to go into this system with very little knowledge of it, didn't know hydraulically how it worked. There was a pump, and it pumped up to a tank, and the main transmission line had basically been just blown out of the ground. The road that was there that it laid alongside had been completely moved by the water that came out of the valley. And the main, like I said, it devastated 3 bridges. The main was out of the ground. And we're looking at it, trying to figure out how are we going to get water back up to that tank. And we didn't want to pump up against like a PRV. So we're trying to figure out the hydraulics, the
Mhm.
system head pressure that was available with the existing pump station wasn't in the same conditions at the time. So it was something we had to work very quickly at and figure out. We eventually figured out we have to get this road back opened up because there were residents living along this stretch of the valley, and they had just been displaced. No one was getting to them. They couldn't get out. So we had contractors come in at 3 different points. We devised that plan, opened the roadway back up, and then we've eventually figured out the best way to get them water was to try to get that pipe laid back in the ground or reconnect it to be able to utilize pieces that were there as well and pump back into that tank. And then we also had to figure out how within their system they had other areas once we got the tank full that were leaking and address those. But the people were so appreciative. I mean, we were the first contact that they had in that area. Eventually, then the National Guard could come in and start providing assistance. But at that time, we were it. And their houses were destroyed. There were, some elderly people. You could just see they had been living in this condition, with the house half gone. And you just think, my goodness, I mean, that's why we're here. Here's how we can help. And it was
Hmm.
just very touching to understand that we are first responders in the water industry as well.
Hmm.
And at times we have to step into those roles. And it was just, it was very, it was something I'd never experienced. And even at the time going into a condition like that, where you're the first ones in a devastated area, when we walked through, there were people missing at the time. So, you'd see things, cars that the metal had been pulled away and you don't know if somebody's in that vehicle or not. You see
Hmm.
wood chippers up in the tree and you're thinking, my goodness, how did something that heavy get in the tree 20 feet above? And there were just things you had to watch for. And you also had a very tight timeline, because once just the smells, once you're there for so
Hmm.
long, the material starts molding around the trash and
Hmm.
debris, and mosquitoes can come about because it's hot. It was in July, that time frame. So um, it was a very rewarding experience in one way, that you're able to help those people, but it really touches you, so you understand when you're trying to do resiliency and risk planning. Definitely right now everyone's doing the AWA planning. We've had a lot of incidences in West Virginia with train derailments, plane crashes, spills, tornadoes, derechos. We've went through a lot, and we've really created good relationships with our National Guard and emergency planning. But that's why it's so important, so you can make sure that you can keep these systems functioning, and if there's an emergency, you can really address it quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it sounds like both harrowing and rewarding, kind of like what you were saying. And I like that you also mentioned that like you were the first ones there. I mean, I think a lot of people in the industry do consider themselves first responders, especially now with everything with COVID and all that going on. It's only highlighted that fact more, but that you got to experience it at such like a ground level and got to see the immediate effect of what your work can do really
Yeah.
highlights like that the value that you can bring by just being a part of the water and wastewater industry. So
Yeah, it's very important, and your strengths come out. You realize when you're forming that team, everyone in that stressful situation, they perform with their strengths. So
mhm.
you really got to match it up well and learn how you can move out of people's way so they can get a piece done, and then you can also complement that and make sure communication wise you can get it to other people that are asking for information. But it was a great opportunity. Unfortunate event, but we're going to
Mhm.
have those.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah. So this could be kind of a hard pivot, but um,
yeah,
moving
no,
on to
you're
your
fine.
hobbies. Yeah, moving on to your hobbies and stuff. Obviously, it looks like tennis was like a big part of your life. It's something that you're clearly really enjoy. Could you talk about how you got into the sport? You mentioned too that at one point you were a coach at a local club. Talk about that experience, and then also like what skills and stuff from tennis kind of translate into your personal and professional life? What have you been able to bring out of that sport and into other aspects of your life?
Okay. Yeah. Tennis, I've been playing, my mom played. So while she was at the court playing with her group, I've had a tennis racket in my hand since I was very little. And I also had the opportunity to play with senior women's groups as their extra when somebody wouldn't show up growing up. So they really taught me how to play smart. A lot of kids, when you go out, you want to hit the ball as hard as you can. That they didn't want to play with somebody like that. So they taught me how to be strategic and use your skills, and play to the opponent's weaknesses as well, and how you need to adjust your game. And that's one aspect, I think, even in business, how you need to adjust your communications, or even when you're playing doubles, you don't want to have necessarily the best player as your partner. If you both have the same skill sets, you aren't addressing the weaknesses so you can build your team. And that goes back to diversity. I know at West Virginia American Water, we care greatly about having a diverse team for that same reason. So you can make sure you have skills that can complement each other's team members' skills. The other part is communication, and then humility. You experience defeat when you play. You can't win all the matches, so how to overcome defeat and grow from it and sharpen your skills as you move on. And I think that all goes back to the industry and business and how I carry myself as a professional.
Hmm. Yeah, just kind of, it sounds, seeing the bigger picture, understanding that this effort means this later. And so if I can coordinate those things in the most efficient way possible, I can have a better game.
Yeah, and hard work. That's the other thing. I mean, it takes hard work and practice. That's a big part of it, and definitely to be able to teach others. So.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and I am not a tennis player by any means, but whenever I've played it, I realize very quickly how taxing it is on my body. So
It's a lifetime sport. You can
yeah.
play it forever. There's people. I know there's a gentleman down at the local park when I was growing up. He was in his late 80s and 90s still playing.
Mhm.
So you can do it. Keep going
Yeah.
out and you'll practice and you'll get better.
Yeah. It was the cardio. That was the problem.
It does
Well,
have some good cardio.
yeah. So, what the last question? So, I've been asking all the young pros about this because I think this is a really good one for us to understand from the ground, like the younger generation moving up. What do you think your generation will do to shape the industry? And then, what do you think the generation after you? What torch do you think they will carry as well?
That's a very good question. And I feel like my generation and my experience, I mentioned earlier that I was given the task of supervising the GIS department at West Virginia
Mhm.
American Water. This was about a year after I had started with the company. And I'm not a GIS person, but we were moving from a department of 1 to 3 at that time. And I was able to set goals and get them to communicate and us moving in one direction. But the other big piece, and I think this is what my generation will be doing, we understand technology, but we also understand why things are done certain ways. And I would really help them. I wanted to help them understand that. If we were having to do some task in GIS, I would go back and show them the financial system and how you pull information and how that relates to what they were doing in the technology sector field, whatever platform we were working in. And I think that's where our generation can serve as that bridge. We understand technology and we also understand the water industry and why things may be done a certain way. It may be related to regulatory aspects or financial aspects, and to help them communicate and learn within the business, because our experience limits our views on how things may be able to be done. And
Mhm.
that is from both maybe a young person that's really good in technology, or a person that's very experienced and seasoned in the industry and has a very efficient way they do things in the field. And we don't want to just go in and replace and make somebody adjust their ways they do it in an effort to fit the technology. We want to find those pain points and enhance it. And there's a lot of skilled people doing a lot of great things with drones and robots and AI and data. And when we're headed that way, that's where the industry is headed. But our generation needs to try to be that bridge and make sure that it is done in a way that is effective and has a purpose and enhances the water industry and the way our utilities operate now, not hinders them from, just
Mhm.
in an effort to just put technology out there. So I think that's where our generation is key, and that next generation, we need to make sure we teach them why things are done a certain way. So from their viewpoint and knowledge of of technology, they can really take off and even go another level higher, with it.
Yeah, yeah. The degree of understanding will just grow exponentially generation upon generation. And so on giving them the tools and the foundation to make sure that things are operating properly, that process and procedure is being followed in the correct way while still implementing those things sounds like the crucial piece there.
Yep, I completely agree.
Yeah.
But we have some really sharp people out there. So the last thing you want to do is, hire them and then tell them what to do. You hear that all the time. So you got to give them the understanding so they can really implement those new technology tools in an effective manner. Because if they're
Mhm.
just doing things just to do things, that doesn't meet anybody's goal.
Yeah,
So,
certainly not. Well, thank you so much, Shelley. We really do appreciate you taking the time today, and it's been great to talk to you and get to know you a little bit better. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we hang up the call?
no, I really appreciate it. And I hope any young professionals watching this session will really take the opportunity to get involved in their professional societies. I think that's a great way to grow, and it's needed. I've never been to any meeting or technical group that couldn't use more help. So if you're out there and you want to help, find a way to get involved with a WWA or WEF or ASE or, some other local organization to where you can grow those skills with presenting in your network. It's just really important.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Well, anyway, thank you so much.
Thanks, Bob. I'll talk to you soon.